where TRIMET has been early not only within the region but nationally. And some of the initiatives that they've undertaken have truly set the trend when it comes to their experience. I'd like to think that their recent adoption of Globe Sherpa is just another step in that evolution, and we have Michael Gray from Globe Sherpa here with us this evening. The other thing I want to mention is that earlier this summer, Diane and Viviana and Tim from TRIMET had mentioned that they wanted to do an event actually on engaging the developer community with the release of some new data and API help. And so with the Technology Association of Oregon, we're helping to kind of get the word out and get people in the seats and participating in what's going on. So thank you for spending some time here tonight. This is just the beginning of the series. And without further ado, I want to introduce Carlos.
Thank you, Skip, and everybody here. Let me see if I can just switch up a little bit. As Skip noted, I think we're very proud of TRIMET, of what we've been able to accomplish. But I think what we've been able to accomplish is just a tip of what we can do. We can do a lot more here as we look to the future. And this series and this session, I think, is an attempt to try to engage the creativity in this developer community. So, Skip, thank you very much for your terrific leadership and partnership in putting this series together. You've helped us kick this off, and I know you're going to be a partner all the way along. I really do appreciate that. I also want to thank all the members of our IT department, led by Tim McHugh, who are here. They're probably just absolutely ecstatic because they're in a room full of people who actually can understand what they say. And they're with a bunch of colleagues I know that they have a great deal of respect for. I'm excited because we have, besides people here, we now have the count. There's 35 developers joining us via video conferencing this evening. Joining us from as far away as Philadelphia, our friends at SEPTA, and in Seattle as well. Before I delve a little bit into the context of this event, I wanted to acknowledge the companies and organizations. First, I want to acknowledge our presenting sponsor, TRIMET, and I had a chance to chat with the Western Region Chief Operating Officer, Thomas Wolf. Thomas, thank you very much for helping support this, and we're looking forward to continue our work with you in the future. I also want to thank our co-sponsor, Kate. Vice President Bill Dillon is here. Bill, I see you're very back. You've also been a key contractor and supplier to us as we develop our new layer of technology. And I'm really pleased that you're here with us to support us here today. So thank you very much. And again, thanks to Skip. I want to also thank Gene Airbar and Eyesight Design for the facility, the space, and for hosting us here as well. So let me just set a little bit of context for this event. I think this is a little bit reaching the choir here. But transit is essential to economic and social viability and vitality of this region. It's particularly important to this region because of our connection of land use and transportation, and transit is a key component to making those plans work. Last year, TRIMET carried nearly 100 million, that means 100 million times somebody stepped across the threshold. And when you look at us compared to national statistics, we're not per capita ridership, even though about 24th in population. I think a big reason for our success, there's lots of reasons for our success, but a very big contributing reason is our commitment to innovation. Our approach here to technology has been historically pretty innovative, and historically paid great dividends in making our riders, giving our riders the tools to make their daily commutes and use of the transit system more convenient. We operate in one of the best technology regions in the world, and we have a lot of opportunities, I think, here to take advantage of that assembled talent, but also to grow that talent with us over a period of time. So I thought it'd be interesting just to sort of walk through where we've been as an organization, particularly related to our data and technology efforts. It goes back to actually January 2001, when we became one of the first transit agencies, web-based transit traffic, the up-to-date moment of real-time transit arrival information. transit tracker by phone call about 18 months later. And we saw this line of just astronomical growth in that adoption of those technologies. It showed that there was a hunger for our riders for that information. In February 2001, we unveiled our first trip plan. Since then, getting on and with lots of help from other members of this community and our staff, have improved that to be a multimodal trip planner and very functional, very flexible. In December 2005, TRIMET was the first transit transit system in the city made a partner with Google to create the new trip planning site, Google Transit. And the use of that third-party application resulted in something I think we've all become out of, which is the General Transit Fee Specification, or GTFS. But that standard format has allowed a lot of the innovation that we've seen since then actually spread across the country. In 2007, as part of this open data process, we started a third-party apps. And this has been a tremendous city transit entity, of course, an enormous proportion, all by themselves, and thanks to others nationally. So my thanks to all of you who contributed to creating those apps over the years, and keeping them current and developing them. I think there are a number of other great innovations that we'll begin to see are possible with our new candidate ADL system. I think that will be very eye-opening to many people here. And finally, earlier this month, Michael pointed out earlier, our riders were the first to be able to use a TRIMET system on a smartphone for both buses and trains, for a whole entire system with the culture of credit tickets on it. And so far, we've had 25,000 people download that app. And that's in a pretty short period of time. We've sold $250,000 worth of tickets. And so we think that that's our transit and culture of the way we're doing that. So without question, TRIMET system is much better because of the work that this community of interest has accomplished over the last few years. And I think, again, this could hold a lot more promise for transit innovation and information innovation in the future. So tonight you'll get a quick peek on our new ADL system. You'll learn about the fast-changing demographics of our riders and some particular needs that are coming out of that. For example, how to serve. And it begins to demonstrate that we must continue to innovate to improve our customers' experience. And we need your involvement, we need your help, and I'm really grateful for you all being here tonight. I look forward to the conversation and the ideas that come from this. So, thank you all very much.
About our resources that are absolutely people in this room have developed that are available. I think for discussion with you, what you see as being valuable data. But just starting with what we did years ago when we were first on that point, there wasn't a big push, there wasn't a big open data push from just kind of an idea that was solicited. Actually, Chris mentioned during the audience. They asking us for it. So we thought, well, there's absolutely no reason why not lock down government agency attitude of United, at the time, probably the flavor of the time. We really wanted to be much more work done and say, well, this is our schedule. This is something we want the customers to have. We want information. So we tried our focus on these core concepts is really without there, make it pretty easy, make it really simple, make it really accept, foster a real communication with the developer community part of the process of agency. We had to do this very efficiently with very constrained. So, here's the data, you know how to do it, have fun. Imagine at the time, no one put together some current schedules, and that's to a credit of all of you here in the audience that really took off. So, for those of you who don't know, I think most everybody barrier to entry on this, so we can just make it up and going. a lot of discussion about how we were going to retroactively go about it.
So that was really, following that, just a couple years ago, we were given lots of initiatives, and they launched today. This was mainly just new applications, a lot of innovation in social media. And then, again, the new APIs that this and use the TRIMET. So it's just kind of free Wikipedia, little
It's like you got all the pieces there, you just gotta put it all together.
It's a lot of data to crunch.
That's what we wanted to ask you.
I'm still using proprietary government data, sorry.
I used to be able to figure out what happened. Was like being a data ghost, was there a real buzz that stopped, or was there a breakdown? I always pull really try to get that information.
Well, I was curious about, I think I know, but I was just curious to hear from you. What is the polling cycle, and how accurate is the current data for the real-time real-time vehicle tracking? As well as, is there any, what's the future of improving that to be better if it's, unacceptable at the moment?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
So basically, the gist of how long is the polling cycle and how accurate is the data down to seconds, minutes, etc., and what is being done in the future to improve that down to, say, you have complete accurate data down to 2 seconds, or actual real time as opposed to, say, a minute.
So the question relates to the polling cycle and how often
Pretty much.
vehicles coming in and how accurate it is.
Yeah.
It's a great question. It's very complicated. The polling cycle is 20 seconds down roughly. 30.
Thank you.
30.
It's supposed to be.
And the vehicle tracking algorithms, there's a lot of complexity to how that's done. It's great when you improve the new systems. The old system breaks down to that at all. It's 100% done here back. We know that the progressing through. But this is actually there's a lot of choice. And one of my experiences recently, if I look out and I can look at this in people in the world that we have available, and I try to build a system in order to monitor service, to react to service.
Just kind of a quick follow-up. Number one, that's why I made my app. I like that you have the latitude, longitude data, so you can really show, where it is. But number two, have you thought about saying this bus is not moved for 2 minutes, or somehow marking if there's a breakdown? I don't know if that gets entered, saying that.
That's exactly what it is.
So sort of related to that, I was on the bus a couple weeks ago, and the bus was a little late, 15, popular route, still left, bus driver, that. Does he push a button and say I'm full, or is and then that'll tell the
They're
next
supposed
person
to.
to stop, the next bus is full, so they don't get all pissed off because the bus
Oh,
has
yeah,
to
you
come
can
up.
data now.
The point of the question is there a way to indicate that two buses were out on the
So, I'm not going to actually shout. Well, I'm going to shout. So, we're going to start off with sort of some ground definition that Tim mentioned in his beginning. You'll hear Caddy background about why we changed to this real quickly. Buses are now installed. They have a touch screen. We'll proactively see where there's a problem in the system, canceling stops, rerouting, and they can do it in ad. And the moment they do it, the operator gets a message, drill down into the problem really fast, and we weren't smart enough at the time that we wrote the spec to put that in. All the items that we're talking about, the service model.
The first thing I'm hearing about, just with those first few questions, is data. The old dispatch system, you create stuff happens on the road that basically going to cause you not to be able to run that. Dispatch will communicate with the operator that takes the test and tell her, I want you to short turn here. But there was no data feed from the dispatch system a lot of times, you will just see a scheduled ride and reroute around that stop, or it's been short-term, and it's bus broken down and it's not done. With this new system, we asked during our spec to get as much real-time data as we could so we knew what the system was doing for our customers, because it's frustrating to stand out there waiting for a bus that never comes. So the goal of what I'm going to show you is just kind of give you a real broad picture of what the dispatch system is, looks like to the dispatcher. And the final thing I'll show you is just an example of what we're looking at here is pretty much just the main screen of what dispatchers see. This upper portion are messages that the operator has sent into dispatch. You can see here at the top there's a blocked bridge train. This means the vehicle's not moving. So dispatch is going to perform some action on this. What it is, I don't know, I'm not dispatching. So, but they'll do something. In the lower half here, these are system generated messages. So you can see here, these are basically the system knowing where the vehicle is and saying, hey, based upon thresholds that we set within the system, these are ahead of the first threshold. So currently we've got our threshold set for the vehicle is more than 180 seconds late. We're going to get this to a late threshold. That needs to be 2 and approximately 40 seconds to get to late 3. We do the same thing with earlies. We've got pre-thresholds for earlies. If the vehicle is more than 2 minutes early, seconds early, threshold 2, and 360 seconds, threshold 3. As AJ mentioned, the occupancy of the vehicle, we actually are getting that as well. So when the vehicle is over 75% occupied, we'll get this threshold message that says occupancy level 1. If it's over 90%, we'll get an occupancy threshold level 2. When the vehicle drops below 75% threshold, then it goes back to this occupancy level 0. What's interesting though is looking at this bottom screen, and this is really to be a nightmare for dispatchers to try to manage the system looking at this. Set mean and ahead of threshold 3. I got to try to figure out where it is. What am I supposed to do with this? It's really not a good picture for dispatch. And this is pretty much all we have in the old system. With the new system, what we have is what is called online statistics. And this is really a really cool tool. Give us a color-based version of what's actually happening on the route. Green is good, other colors are bad. So the blue colors indicate vehicles that are running late, and yellow is indicates vehicles that are running early. Dispatchers really like to see green. But from a glance, and I should say here as well, what I'm showing here is basically all of our routes. The way dispatch is set up is they log into a duty and they're assigned a series of routes. So they're not seeing the entire system. They have the ability to do that if they want, but generally they're just looking at a piece of the system. So they're not. So a dispatcher can take a look at this and see what's happening out here. Here with the 57, we've got a big chunk of green here, and with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of blue. So that route's probably doing pretty well, but let's just take a look at it. What I'm doing now is bringing up the graphical representation of the actual route. What this is showing is all the stops that are on Route 57 for the primary pattern. Occasionally you'll have vehicles that might do an offshoot of this particular pattern. This display right here is the main set of stops that this route will do. See here is this is giving you an indication of where the vehicles are on that route. It gives you basically an indication of spacing. The colors match up with something I had meant to mention and I didn't earlier, but those early late thresholds I was talking about, we have colors that are associated with those. Green is good, blue is late, but we have multiple shades of blue that are associated to those late thresholds. Colors match up here in the route letter as well, so we can see that
This guy right here is running a little bit late. I can tell that for two reasons. One, the color. Secondly, this little arrow here is basically showing where this vehicle should be according to schedule. Where this square is actually where the vehicle is currently located. So from this picture, just to actually get an idea of vehicles are functioning, and as you talked earlier about this drop-off only, if you've got two vehicles real close together, that leader is going to be picking everybody up, and that bus behind is going to be in. So we're going to do something about that. And some of that might be a drop-off only. Turn the other bus around and start picking up the service where the leader should allow us to dispatchers to do that. The part that's really cool is that data that's going to be generated out of that is something that we will do and hopefully in some way provide how we do that and kind of what the purpose of this is. So I'm ready to go into the test system. I could explain a little bit of what's showing here in these blocks, these little vehicle icons. The data in these vehicle icons basically gives the dispatcher indication of what's happening here. It contains the amount of time he has in his layover. Currently, there's nothing to show you where vehicles have a problem, but this area here, zero there, if he was running so late that when he got to the end of the line, he wouldn't have enough time to pause and take a break or whatever. That'll show up in red. So basically, the vehicle is running so late that he's behind what is. So with that, we're going to the test system, and I'll show you operator scene, and I will test this. So you notice it's a little bit easier to manage. You know, a lot happening. It's nice. So what I'm going to do is really nice tool. This basically is giving the dispatcher a look at all the stops, all the times that are associated with those stops. Comes where the vehicle should be according to schedule. Right now, we don't have the vehicle locked onto this block. And so if there was a vehicle locked onto this block, where you would be, or where you log into this block. And this is, I log in with my operator ID. Gives them an indication of some of the stats.
Oh, wow.
Testing these things by pushing buttons on the vehicle to make sure that they're. Gives them some error messages or whatever. Typically, those error messages aren't showing up, but because it's the test system, we don't have a external peripherals attached. So, log in for 56, 69. Now it's basically prompting me to pick the trip that I'm actually running on. So again, it's what this guy. It'll give them the most likely trip that they're running on based upon the time. Now the part that I'm having to do manually that the operators don't have to do is once the vehicle starts driving around, it'll find itself jumping on a route, and they don't have to actually go in and say, hey, here's where I am. But because this is basically it's a bus and box where it is. So I'm going to set the stop. So again, what this is showing is the overhead is on the vehicle 56 volts flare. The next stop the vehicle is heading to. This is here in the right-hand corner. It gives the operator indication of the run. And so if we were to pull up the problem. So, what I want to show you here is, let's say this vehicle is broken down at this point, it's not moving. He's 10 minutes late, and our signs are going to say that 10 minutes later it's broken. It's going to continue to say that until the vehicle either starts to move again, or dispatch performs an action indicating that broken down is stopped. It's not going to serve. What dispatcher can do is go in here and mark the stops that are not going to be served. What they can do is perform a curtailment, which is basically just canceling a series of stops. From here, this pre-populates the block, populates the start and end stop with what we're canceling. Dispatcher can come in here and pick an action. Sometimes basically giving them an explanation of, yeah, I'm curtailing you. I want you to all this path and go to this stop. And check to see if there's any consequences. What this is going to do is go out and see, hey, do I have any, another big feature of this is the system can actually have transfer protection, connection protection. Put these in and say, hey, this is the last block of the night. I want to make sure that anybody who's going there to meet it, if I cancel the stop, connection affected. So, all right. So I've now effectively canceled those stops. What you can see here on the operator's display is that he gets an indication that he's got a curtailment on his trip. A little bit more of an explanation as to what that is. Now the interesting part here is what maybe if I explain it a little bit more is that the operator is also seeing the next sequence of stops that he has coming ahead. Now, a stop before what the curtailment is. You'll notice that stops this Houston Hillsdale 45th, Hillsdale 50th, Shattuck, all of these stops originally were being displayed to the operator. They have been removed from the operator's schedule. So the next stop that he can go to is 5,000 block of Southwest Ferry Road. Exactly what the dispatchers perform. The great part about that is that data those stops that were just canceled are passed real time to us via the steering feed. And we are currently in the development process of taking that data and we will be able to put some type of message up indicating that if you were waiting at one of those stops, that vehicle's not coming in. Previous to this, dispatchers would basically got on the radio and told the vehicle, hey, I want you to do this. You would see the transit tracker in the old days, the vehicle would do this curtailment, go off route, and you would just see scheduled arrival times for all of these stops. So, in this brand new world, we should be able to provide a lot more accurate data to our customers, and you guys should have a lot of fun. So with that, I think I'm done. Now I'm going to step on down and take a seat before I pass out.
So hopefully this gives you a good idea of the types of things and the type of environment that everybody's operating in the dispatch center, and it's challenge to actually get the data that's in there out in a useful format. So hopefully this gives you an idea of the kinds of things you see that plot your mind of how you would use some of this data. That's really kind of the thing. I'm going to turn it over to Nate to start a little bit of a question and answer session. We'll start with some of the things that are contemplated and want to go from there. Thank you very much.
How's everyone doing? Everybody think so far? Interesting. Cool. My name is Nate Nero, and I'm with Open Affairs Television. We're actually doing some live streaming and reporting tonight, but I'm a Portland resident. I'm pretty familiar with what's going on with the transit agency and the open data initiatives. And I actually had met the folks, the leadership, through the Government Open Source Convention about 3 years ago. And that was 2010. You were already a few years into the efforts, and it's amazing to see what's gotten so far. So what we're thinking about doing next year is opening it up to some questions and a little Q&A. We actually have an online audience as well of about 30 people roughly joining us. And those folks as well. But I'll take some hands to start off, and then we'll also grab some questions. And what is your name?
Jason.
Jason.
There is the load capacity that you guys are assessing. Is there also the bike capacity on buses? Because I know I've had personal requests like
We got any sensors on them?
No. Yeah, the question for the online audience and the tape, of course, is do they have any way of indicating bike fill capacity on the bus? And since there are no sensors on the bike carriers today, they cannot provide that kind of
Is there like an operator setting where they can say, hey, we've got 2 bags, so whatever?
I don't actually work for TriMet, so I can't really speak to those. But
There's nothing now, but I'm sure Init would love us to pay to develop something like that.
yeah, I think that.
She's writing your notes down. Keep on going, keep on going.
The extended question was, is there any way for the operator of the bus to indicate that somehow? Of course, that's kind of a real.
I'll put cameras on all the buses.
Do that, or Arduinos, or. Cool.
If you can't consume the data in real time, is there the capability back and doing a database query on it?
So the question was from Ed Borowski, if the data is not available in real time, you can go
Or
back.
if you don't have the resources consuming it.
If you don't have the resources to consume the information in real time, then you go and get the time series data.
Yeah.
I believe that you can, but again, I don't know if they're trying that. So some of those specific questions I can, or I can translate or.
So, could you be a little more specific? Kind of example you'd be looking for? Like what's not available in real time that you want to get?
Well, I wouldn't want to park a server consuming your data if I wanted to do an analysis of stuff over a month. I just want to go call you up and say, give me the last month's worth, give me everything from the last month.
From what I know of its work, it's generally time series historical data.
Yes. So we have that. We have that in our own internal databases, and we use that for a lot of our analysis reporting. It's huge.
Well, yeah.
What we've been talking about recently, that's one of the things we're looking at, is can we just out, so we put it out in chunks, consume however much you want to consume. Give you an idea of the scale of that, probably between 400,000 and 500,000.
There's the possibility. Oh, sorry.
So actually, I'm going to take one from the online audience, from Roger Cobbin, I believe is the name. I guess the basic question is, how long has the developer .trimet.org/WSV1 arrival information been available? We at DatNav have been using it to determine next real-time arrivals for about a year. So, who wants to take that one?
I have no idea.
Probably since 2005.
Oh, okay, yeah, so probably about 2005, that would be formally since 2007. I believe that stuff probably came online with your initial implementation. And then,
This is a question for the TRIMET folks. Lots of cases you don't have a connection, but since the rail line kind of bought providing Wi-Fi service on the maps, they didn't give you
power utility.
Yeah, exactly. Really, I know for myself, going through tunnels and going through some areas that would be nice. The phone drops out. It'd be nice to have some ubiquitous connectivity.
Well, I know in some cities they've experimented with leaky coax as well. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, so it's an expensive proposition, putting that, we've talked about it several times, about providing customer Wi-Fi on the vehicle, on the platform. We continue to look at it. We provide it on the web. I'm sure everybody has written.
How do they do that?
So on web, it was kind of an offshoot, something that was an operational requirement for the...
It made a new record.
Great question. Yeah, and that's been a problem historically in cities all over. And like I said,
My name is John, and
come on over.
okay, hasn't been started yet. And who is actually going to be developing this thing?
So to answer your question, we have prepared a presentation. Thanks for the softball.
The answer is no. That was my title. That was not my title. So, we don't have anything ready right now. I would much prefer to have this. I wasn't asked to. So here we are. So as soon as possible, we're going to be including in the, probably I'll have it in 4. Probably had another version on that, and
The field's already there. I wonder what field's already there for that.
Absolutely. Those are like 2-year life. Our current plan is to just put that in, just constantly make a trip update service. GTFS real-time alerts. So this is just kind of a mock-up of what it might look like, or what the data might look like. Here there's a trip, and then the end of it. But after that, it's just an example. I felt like I needed to show. I imagine that, right, well, I don't because I haven't done it. I imagine it might look very much like that, depending on the detail.
Is there the opportunity to add additional data elements to this?
Absolutely. This is quite open.
Okay.
This is not like the only thing that's going to be available. There's others.
Yes.
Like trip ID.
Or how full the bus is?
Yeah, we can probably get like the reason to play on the screen. I don't think we'll probably do that.
Well, and actually, this is a good spot for another question from our online audience, from David Porter, who you may or may not know is a professor at PSU here in Portland in their GIS department. And David asks, when a dispatcher encounters a problem, do they rely on experience to solve it, or does init provide an optimizer module to find the best possible solutions?
Well, it is definitely a experience-based. I mean, that online statistics that I showed you basically gives them the overview of something's happening. When a real incident happens out there, dispatcher experience will be basically giving them an indication of where there might be potential problems and allow them to be proactive versus reactive. And but you can't be the experience of the dispatcher.
But,
However,
the dispatch group is working on standard operating procedures and trying to work through this new world, guys, how dispatchers will react within certain situations.
predictively, or you have predictive systems that don't necessarily approach something that's going to automatically rot around trouble. You're assisting decision support.
Anybody gathering those reactions?
Not at that level yet, no.
We don't even do that in healthcare yet. So, I know. We're working on healthcare too. But. Got it.
You had earlier. So when a bus goes off route, you decide you're going to go down one street instead of another, whatever the off route message, and then we can include something that indicates the bus is a rider who's using one of our services. But if the data is available, that the bus has.
Just in terms of.
Well, let me hop over and grab your question. And I also wanted to point out that David Porter with OSU, not PSU. I apologize.
So this is, I guess, more for init. Do you guys plan to have vehicle temperature sensors? Because I know, based upon Twitter, most people have complained about, oh, this bus doesn't have AC, it's very hot. Is there a sensor that you guys can add to like detect that this bus is? I mean, I figure it's just a thermometer.
Comfort data? Are we going to add comfort data? Or is that another Arduino project? Hello.
We can build some of the people really question technically any sense of that.
There's also a limit between, it's kind of like you might have all these sensors, but
But I know you're basically going to create a mobile app that canvasses riders' phones for temperature. And you're crowdsourcing that temperature information essentially. So that's to me really interesting. I mean, that's the other thing about this whole endeavor, is that that kind of stuff. And we actually had a meeting earlier this week and talked about how much data you could potentially crowdsource from riders, share with dispatch. There's some feelings on whether that's valuable or not, or information overload for dispatch. But those are the kind of things you could potentially do.
Well, I guess it's not necessarily crowdsourcing from riders, but is there any potential? Granted, the fleet of TRIMET is fairly limited in terms of how many buses we really have compared to large-scale operations, I imagine.
I would want to change the oil and all.
But is there potential to add, say, smartphones that when the data is available, it will ping back every phone has a temperature, or has a thermometer, and there's all sorts of GPS data that, if it is connected to a cell network, then hey, here's data, and that phone is always on. Since crowdsourcing is if a user really wants to do it sort of thing, and usually no user riding a bus is really going to be thinking about it, they're going to be playing Candy Crush or something. So,
And the process is going to be going crazy.
yeah, it's going to be super hot. So is there any thoughts of like equipping, phones, cheap phones with cell network data and sending back some...
And just like programming the bus.
Yeah, why not? Right under the seat. So I'm just spitballing.
Typically, the most troublesome part about working in a bus environment, and one of the reasons that equipment needs to be pretty rock solid. It's pretty rattly environment. So wherever you're installing that, we have lots of the specific detail we go into in our RFP for this
vibration,
saying you have to meet these thresholds.
Mil spec.
Yeah. So and connectors are a big issue. So that's something we pay a lot of attention to. So why it's a good idea to do things like that. What we would probably more focus on is, we will have an actual cell card and mobile access router that actually provides the data. But you're still, no matter what device you're putting on there, we're managing what's the priority for what's going to go through this device.
Yeah.
So we want to put streaming seats and how comes up the priority. That's something we want to consider. That's going to take priority.
Of course. I would hope so.
Yeah.
Well, that was because actual download, and then there are phones that will really...
Well, yeah, that's what we were suggesting. Yeah, that's kind of what I was suggesting. But again, it is, fraud, them accepting operational data from the public. Well, not even just bandwidth issues, but reliability. How reliable is that information? Like the phone.
This would be low priority data.
Well, I'm not even talking about the priority. I'm talking about the validity of the data, right? You have an app that's telling you the bus is 135 degrees. Because somebody's got the phone in their, in their laptop. or their. So we don't have any more questions from the audience, but guys, I want to continue on. This is the last slide. For sure. All right.
So, something that we'd like to publish as soon as data is available on an ongoing basis. I've been told that include basically the vehicle is going for speeds, width, where was that, where it was supposed to be, and when it was supposed to arrive. There's the also service event data, which includes if it's off route and returns the route. I put a bunch of others, like Sarah Davis, so anyway, that kind of information.
Great job.
So also we'll be including
Well, that's not linked anywhere though. There's nothing on the site that tells you the URL. But
okay, so we will be...
Once it's automated, I'll put it up there. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be keeping the archive of the every time we cut a schedule, we keep that copy.
There are updates to the schedule for the system.
Yeah, so basically right now, we go to that schedule, we're getting what's... Well, last month, we did 3 times.
That happened if, let's say there was some sort of disaster, or you guys go ahead and do something quickly, because I'm sure that gets done sort of in a planned way.
They're
I mean, it probably gets done in a
The streetcar.
Yeah, or typically it's due to construction.
construction or like marathons or other events like that. When you get some forewarning, planning is really good.
Yeah, I mean, big events, we already have those planned.
Right. Well, and that's what I was asking about.
Last minute construction type of stuff.
Unplanned.
Typical, yeah.
Perfect.
Figuring out how to schedule.
One part of the transit.
Session here are scheduled and planned. We have calls during the demonstration. So the things are happening both times. It's kind of like a dynamic schedule change what they're doing.
So, any more questions?
Okay, go over here. Sorry.
Actually, want to go back about a slide or two. My question's about that. think it's just one or...
We're back, Arrow.
Yeah, oh. So number one, would that include like the bridge and train delays messages in that first part?
Yes.
And have you thought about putting that into a regular transit tracker day, like transit tracker by phone? So you're like here saying, this bus is delayed due to a bridge lift.
So we had a few more questions. The first person to raise their hand. Oh, okay. Round.
So if it's a pool of God, how will that improve?
What happens right now is today, I don't want to.
I love the snow.
We're right in the middle of transitioning off to the old system, which didn't handle it well, and then we're doing a new system that is going to handle it well someday, but before, that's what I'm imagining. I don't know.
So, as you're all aware, the old system, that's been around for a long time. A lot of development had been built on top of that. This ability to have snow routes in the system, still kind of in this iterative process where we're processing statistics data, we're processing real-time data, really chomp at the bit to start working on the snow and ice stuff. But we're just still...
Yeah, and don't hold your breath for this winter. That's always getting on good today, as you may or may not know. So deal with the lack of data for now.
So how would you think this data could interact with, after the big event a few years ago, there was sort of a scramble? It seems like there could be, more than just sort of like updating. Yeah. If you guys run across a bad spot, how could you feed that back to, a city crew that can go out?
Your transportation operations.
That's my understanding too. I've never actually been there and seen it. But
Yeah.
Schedule to be next time.
No, there you go.
I'll be there.
Yeah, so that's how they currently handle it, and my understanding is there's been huge leaks, especially about where you guys drop rocks and drop sand, where you thought, and now you're actually doing high routes.
Oh, especially in a city like Portland, we tend to be pretty good like that, kind of open and sharing, kumbaya.
So this is an unfair question for the technology folks, so if you want to say, we'll get back to you and answer, that's fine. I want to ask about Arrival Star. Arrival Star, for those who don't know, is the patent for all those means. They have a patent that covers all arrivals. After the trade group, the transit agency, basically, got an agreement that Arrival Star would not go after transit agencies. Then the last couple of weeks, I heard a report of Arrival Star going after developer using open data. So my question is, do you have any information on that? And specifically, does your developer agreement create enough of a nexus between us and you that we're protected under the APTA settlement?
Is it the iPhone app that's
It's a different city, I don't remember.
in San Francisco? I forget what the name of the iPhone app is, but you can get it too.
That's why I can answer that with our data. But you're absolutely covered. We have a specific, we can release our data to our hearts and we will not, we're licensed. Right? We're licensed under that as well. Any third party, that we explicitly put that in there, any third party, we are going to kill you for saying
So we got time for a couple more questions. We'll do a little sidebar here, and I'll walk slowly so you guys can converse. So what do you all think so far? I mean, does it sound like good stuff? Are we excited about this? How many developers are here tonight? Raise your hands who plan on utilizing the data. So probably 50% of the room, I would say, almost 50%, which is awesome. And then others. Who else is here from other transit agencies tonight? Did anybody come down from another? Awesome. No. Okay. Oh, up from Salem. Awesome. Okay. I know we have some folks from other agencies on the live stream tonight as well, and you're also with Ride Connection. Ride Connection. Oh, okay. Ride Connection is like a private
We're a private nonprofit.
A private nonprofit, right? Okay. So another question.
This is, I guess, more for those that are developing TRIMET API. So Guy and
Mike.
Mike. As much as I love hammering TRIMET servers, do you have any plans to create a subscription service so that I can send an endpoint and you guys can hit me with data changes?
So sort of a pub sub pub up
Yeah, exactly.
type model.
You know, geographic, bounding boxes. Hey, these many buses have entered these. Geographic bounding boxes. These many buses have entered these. Areas. Ping the servers that have subscribed to these.
So we haven't had a lot of trouble so far, except for when a couple of people have behaved badly. Happened, I don't know how, but every time somebody serviced the query our service, they would then spawn another query. It would spawn another on top of that. So it just takes the server at 100% load. Anyway, so I think last week, very so far it hasn't been huge, but to answer your question, I thought about that.
Yeah, I meant within a couple of years, something to think about.
Yeah, I thought about that.
I guess a follow-up question would be, what is the acceptable? I'm kind of too lazy to read the terms of service. So, what is the acceptable rate to hit you guys? I think I'm currently hitting you every 10 to 12 seconds or something like that.
So far, that's fine. That has his app is by far They're sitting right there. So, right now we're getting at night. It's not that many. I'll just run that what out.
Well, does that mean that the new API you have planned, you're going to experiment with throttling and some of the things you have modern APIs?
I haven't had anything that's throttling.
You haven't had to, but you have plans to.
As soon as this problem, it'll be top priority.
Excellent. Just in time development.
That actually brings up a really good question. What would you say is the, I can't think of the word, but the best instance or best interval for checking?
The optimal.
Yes, the optimal.
The optimal frequency.
Yes.
Polling frequency.
Yes.
Since you can kind of make a decision and see all the vehicle locations that you're using, the times last when you heard from that vehicle, you also know from the night that our polling cycle right now is about 30 seconds. So we can have the...
Yeah, I was doing 20...
Put some guidelines up there that, the reliability we recommend 20 to 30 seconds.
Okay.
It really depends on, how...
Well, and we've got time for one more question. Understanding that you're at the microphone. Thank you all for all of your questions. I certainly want to continue getting feedback. And that's kind of what my question is to TRIMET. Now that we're looking at this, we're revisiting this and looking at building. What other plans does TRIMET have to engage? What plans does TRIMET have to continue engaging the technology community? And is there room to get developers, since this is kind of an open data project, who are willing to do development in an open source sort of approach? Is there an openness or potential to engage those that through the infrastructure software that you guys are building? I see a guy running his head like, no. So, you must say yes. Perfect, because we'll be moving on to the end.
Okay. Open source product, and we've also developed several, and we've been working towards collaborating with the community. I wanted to bring this up as a topic. That is a potential program we will
I think that's the challenge. I think all of you and I realize all the effort didn't do this program, but I feel like I have a limited development or developer friendly
rights and orientation regards to how different apps, bragging about the extent of the new applications and also the number of them. A very simple question is that, was there any consideration by people to develop any of those apps in other languages? Because in this, if you look at the demographics that Neil was mentioning earlier, those demographics are changing. Back in 1990, in the Tri-County area served by TRIMET, there were about almost 40,000 that lived here, over population. By 2000, that increased to 116,000 people, which was 8% of the population. 2010, that number is 190,000, which is close to 12% region in terms of TRIMET area, amount to about 8.5% of the population. 30 of those, of course, are Spanish-speaking folks. And here's an opportunity that, unlike trading, you have a given, by many of you here, because, in absence, I look at the things that are done. I mean, much of that is driven by the love you have for the work that you're doing, not because of any rewards. But nonetheless, I asked Viviana, what would it take to begin to look at the possibilities of developing some of those apps, particularly Spanish, which for me is my own community. So I have sort of vested interest. So I was here to more engage or begin to engage in that dialogue with you, because I did before coming here, I also did a search on the web to see if there was any apps in Spanish around. And there was one that came up, I think it was in Mexico City just last month, again, also using like open source kind of this app that is being used. Limited use, but again, they expect quite a bit of growth.
Yeah, so
I just hold on right here to the mic.
Sure.
Sorry. So the people at home can hear you.
So I had a little bit of experience with this. Portland Transport's principal app right now is low-cost displays that are like the displays that TriMet has in their shelters on the MAX line. We could basically put a Raspberry Pi processor on the back of an HDTV and give you the same kind of display. And I encouraged a lot of the organizations applying for RTO, Regional Transportation Options grants to Metro, to put those displays in their grants. And had a conversation with Centro Cultural out in Hillsborough. And they said, hey, can you do it in Spanish? So we looked at what's on the display, and there are a few strings like minutes. We're sure we could swap that out to Spanish, but really what we want is to have the route names and stop names in Spanish, because that's the bulk of the text that winds up on the display. So is TriMet able to provide those in Spanish at some point in the future?
Isn't that your thing?
Let me just comment that there is some work that has been done by TriMet. It's not that the work has been done. I mean, there's a website using some old kind of a data.
Typically, when you get to street names and couch, appear there. And so we look at people like our team to advise us.
Right, but what I encounter is that stop names, there may be, for intersection, it may be such and such and such and such. So and can be translated. Routes can be via somewhere, so that could be translated.
That comes out. That's lift that out. Another question.
I just sort of follow up with that. I maintain the street data for the Gotham street name into various parts. You've got a Cooch street, So I don't know if how the OpenStreetMap, I can't remember how the naming would work. You're really just looking at the street at stop IDs, really. So then you just build another table where you've got.
We're not actually using it.
Isn't it more than that? It's like 8. No. Of course, there's a lot of old stuff.
We have official names. Some of them, are names, not close quarters. Okay.
Pretty explicitly maintained, right? So again, I think the question comes back as to what would it take for. Yeah, I got to be more specific. I mean, some have a best good incentive for you to take this on, and what to me is not just being, in terms of the interest that I have, also in terms of the community. So my commitment is a personal commitment to then look at bringing in some resources to be able to help you be able to account what are those types of things that might be motivating. Frank already told me, by the way. Frank says, look, if you get me on TV, I'll finish it quick.
I'm wrong.
I can guarantee you use the televisión, and I can guarantee you some of the other media that's probably going to be able to pick it up because it is unique. It is something that hasn't been done, and it is probably something that some of your hired to follow in that example because there isn't that work. That work is not.
Has TRIMET done any studies on the languages ridership? What percentage of the ridership speaks Spanish?
Data already from the census. We also have some surveys that have been done.
Oh, deadline for
timetable for delivering IATM versions of the
different languages, international.
Internationalization.
So are you talking about, is there a timetable for when the translations in their backend database are going to be done? Because they expose their APIs and everything from the data that they already have.
In English, localized in the U.S. as opposed to one.
Oh, okay.
So that we get those bits that they can translate. And then, so it's a situation. Outside the parts that are part of the app translated, it's like for us because we're looking at processing and getting.
Well, but I think that the data is already translated and internationalized in their system. So
is that exposed in investment?
Given the type of APIs we were talking about today and how you use them.
The HTTP language accepts header on the request.
Pardon?
The HTTP language accepts header on the request.
The browser.
So
just some parameter that you pass that tells us what language you want.
yeah, like on a request and a response, you can say a language accepts or format accepts.
Right.
Or Stig accepts, French or accepts.
And the server would know.
And then the server would say, and then respond with that.
Client.
If it had it available, or whatever. I mean, that's a technical issue, but you're right. But I mean, that's one way that it doesn't really change the API. It's just in terms of endpoints and everything else.
You didn't set the right language header for 15.
Does the trip planner support other languages?
Trip planner?
Well, one of
The new one? Well, you realize that's a new trip plan. About a year ago, they had a proprietary system that was replaced with a completely open source stack that was built. What Viviana was talking about, because now community all over the world.
Right, but there's still data being served through there. I'm assuming you're feeding your own dog, if you're using the same service we use. So if that site you do Spanish, you do French, you do Russian, you do German, then we should have access to those same
What I'm actually surprised about is, so on TRIMET.org right now, except none of the route names nor the stop names are. I thought that was quite. I kind of thought that was on purpose because the overhead sign is in English.
Yeah.
I mean, if there are certain stuff that aren't, the platform name should be translated.
I guess so, but yeah, no, we don't have that right now. And the API doesn't do that.
See,
What is
the particulars?
What is the Spanish
Origin,
translation?
destination,
Pretty
some of the specific stuff, want to this way, want to have like that
Right.
thing. So some of the instructions part of that gets translated. The stop names or, get identified in regards to parada, whatever. But the name doesn't change because that's what the visual that people are going to see.
They're going to see those characters.
And so that doesn't change. But in transit packet, it would change in regards to the pronunciation of it. Just, people understand this. Like southeast, it doesn't change west. But northwest, certain things we're going to be able to deliver, but in terms of the language part, once it's spoken, but writing, I don't think that's going to change because people know the part that what other messages that you give in terms of instructions, that's the part that is going to be delivered in a way that Not just like Google Translate, because Google Translate sometimes is interesting.
I'm wondering about just being able to, perhaps TriMet could serve sort of a hub role around this, because each app is going to have, it's have to be internationalized in the codes differently. But the actual labels that are used for the, for example, wizard for asking for directions, where do you want, where are you starting from? I mean, all those things are going to be the same translations, or potentially the same translations, but similar from app to app. And if TriMet is able to perhaps, crowdsource those translations and make them available to app developers, that would help smooth the APIs
or having localization in something, and that is dependent on the app.
Sure, mnemonic.
Yeah, exactly. Or not even do that, it's just like handle the stop names, route names, those on.
Well, and that's the beauty of something like this. This is, you get a bunch of brains in the room and find all kinds of stuff.
Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I wanted YouTube, a piece of 13-year-old. So this guy has got this kind of, we make conferences. Yeah, there's that you won't have to use your apps. So I'm going to have to tell that I was in more than one person that produced something that other people. Again, thank you for this opportunity. Let me know if you can be helpful to whoever you come up with. Appreciate it tonight.
So we do have a little bit of time left here. We have covered a number of the topics we were hoping to cover tonight. And talk about what's next. We've got a couple other topics. Getting short on time, of course. You guys have lots of great questions.
There's a couple other issues we want to talk about now. Think about Google Maps study, not multimodal by transit or by bike, by walking,
So, current users of the API who are in the room or online, of course we have our friends online as well, and it's likely that some of them had on me for not saying something funny. So, hands, questions, anybody? The current API, seems like you're ready. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, this is an issue I kind of came up the other day is when you have an inserted trip, is that showing on Transit Tracker or supposed to show on Transit Tracker?
Not yet.
Okay.
That was the very first thing.
I know that's one of the great features. I mean, before you'd have to have the data card sent to the bus.
Right. Exactly.
So
the new system will be able to get those trips.
Okay, so it's
We're done digesting the data out of their system. We'll put it out. We might get it first because I'm not sure that our own. So we might actually get it before the
I was kind of able to see. You're giving a workout tonight.
Yeah, no, it's good.
I was kind of able to see it in the vehicle position data API, but not in the transit tracker. I could see it was assigned to the 57 and at the 5790 whatever block, but it wasn't showing up in the transit tracker data.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I've become a fat car driver here. I used to be like an avid TRIMET guy, so good.
what's happening at this moment, we don't have the data yet, is vehicles might be performing much.
Anything else? Comments, suggestions?
Over here. I think, I'm walking over this. I mean, we're going to do more of these, right? You know, do that a little bit. So kind of schedule, you have a schedule for that?
Yes, let's see. My question was, is there a way for it to be worked on with the web or
I don't have a plan of doing something like that. I mean, there's
plenty of tools out there that you can point at a website and see when it's changed.
Also, mailing lists.
Mailing lists.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Right, but a lot
Email
of
the original
people
social
that use
network.
GIS data are especially like
field developers, all the way, and they don't know how to set up something like that. So it would be great if it was.
Yeah, I mean, there's a last update timestamp. It's in an HTML page, which, beautiful, set that thing up. I don't know. Yeah, I don't have a RSS feed or anything like that that says when our GIS data changes or when our GTFS even.
You could go. That's just another way of publishing it, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good idea. Excellent idea. Lon, I'm going to come over here. You got lots of questions.
Yeah, I think this is I don't know if it's really a feature request or an API, but what I'd like to be able to do is I like the Google trip planner because I can click on the map and drag it and change. Okay, no, I want to go this way instead of this way. So I want to click that button, but I want to start here on my bike and right here. But I also like that you guys show the the elevation changes. So I'd like to see like the next generation of the trip planner allow me to customize route more instead of saying no, you have to get on the 15 because that's the closest stop. Well,
rubber banding essentially, so you can drag points on the routes around at a object.
And Google has 500 people working on maps.google.com.
Okay, here's real quick after we get to Stanley.
It's a good question slash feature request possible. I remember in the early days when certain attributes of the XML was number, but you did have to string.
So you want some more surprises?
Well, unless like something a little bit more cohesive, or maybe it's like maybe IDL definitions of these structures, or something a little bit more rigorous. Then you'll get a date here, and then sometimes you'll get a date, but sometimes you'll get a number sure, and you'll get a 0 or something. So it's like things are maybe more cohesive or denser documentation.
More exception handling.
Unless it's already been provided easily. I understand documentation.
More exception handling on the middleware side before it's sent.
Well, just a more denser description of the returns data, and not just it's a data or it's a number, but it's a data number. But you might also get these other values as well. Like I said, there were times where I was expecting a number, and I got an empty string. That's not a number.
So you're looking for this in the documentation? Okay, not necessarily.
No, just the documentation so we know what to expect. There's aberrations from what's described.
Well, that comes to an excellent point. I mean, documentation.
Probably fix it. If there's a bug in there,
well, no,
probably mention it. And then if you say, it'd be nice to have a document. Everybody, that's fine and knows that I'm the documentation guy. Right?
Speak good.
So anyway, I mean, that can be, just speak up. I'm fairly responsible when you do it.
I would really like to wrap up with just something like we did again. I think from the TRIMET perspective, it was really great. I know I've met. So is that something that we can talk about out in the hall?
And empty room.
I just wanted to again thank our sponsors in it, and of course eyesight again. Hey, that's eyesight.
Hi everybody, I won't take too much of your time. I really appreciate everybody coming out, and we love hosting events like this. Glad to see this kind of developer community turn out for an event like this. We love hosting community events here at SITE. We're a full-service digital agency. We have, part of what we do is building new technology. Now, the weekend of October 25th is a hackathon we're calling Present Locator, who you probably all know right down the hall here. Focused hackathon, but we're going to be looking at the Portland public data set. A lot of people in this room will probably have a lot of fun digging into it. So watch. All I really want to say is thank you all for coming out tonight. This is an amazing turnout.
Go to the bathroom.
2030.
Oh.
The code for the bathroom is 2030.
Okay.
Yeah. To walk 4 blocks from here.
Now, you did the transit journeys and whatever stuff. Is that you or is that someone else?
Epic transit journeys?
Yeah, or...
Yeah.
I really like that thing. I was kind of... It's hard to keep it up to date, but I actually made a whole map of all the connections you can make. It's pretty.
Oh, cool.
So what do you do exactly now? Are you a programmer or?
Yeah, I'm a web developer. I have internal apps at TRIMET.
Okay, cool. It's like all the TRIMET stuff they have and whatever. Or... Okay.
And I'm working with a whole bunch of people.
Okay.
New
Oh. Okay, and do you do the map app or, well, that's kind of the external thing. I think the map, that's not really
What map?
the interactive map. Oh, you do internal stuff things like.
Yeah, that
Okay.
the interactive map is Spring.
Okay, yeah. I was just curious.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting. There's a lot of people behind the scenes. Yeah.
Stuff we do.
Yeah.
But at the moment, what do you do?
I've made the rosecitytransit.org. I have about 3 different things. There's number 1, the transit tracker, basically the map-based one, so it shows like where the next bus actually is. Number 2, I've got the system map, which basically just showcases the vehicle arrival, the vehicle location data. Oops, sorry. Yeah.
So you've got your work cut out for you, Paul.
You're able to make it.
I can see.
Well, you didn't have the country.
Oh, yeah, the 30 seconds. I could do it. When I heard Johnny, I was like, that was my 30 seconds.
Bring your glass bottles down.
And okay, you put service here, you put service back. Where's your analysis that says that was you have this up on your website?
Is this still going on?